The original News Corporation in News Corp. was an American multinational mass media corporation headquartered in New York City. It was the world's fourth largest media group in 2014 in terms of revenue. Board members include prominent former Spanish Prime Minister Jose Maria Aznar. News Corporation was a publicly traded company listed on the Nasdaq, formerly incorporated in Adelaide, South Australia. The company was reincorporated under Delaware General Corporation law after a majority of shareholders approved the move on the 12th of November 2004. News Corporation was headquartered at 1211 Avenue of the Americas, New York, in the newer 1960s-1970s corridor of the Rockefeller Center complex. On the 28th of June 2012, Rupert Murdoch announced that, after concerns from shareholders in response to its recent scandals and to unlock even greater long-term shareholder value, News Corporation's assets would be split into two publicly traded companies, one oriented towards media and the other towards publishing. The split formally took place on the 28th of June 2013, where the present News Corp was renamed 21st Century Fox and consists primarily of media outlets, while a new News Corp was formed to take on the publishing and Australian broadcasting assets. Its major holdings at the time of the split were News Limited, News International, Dow Jones and AMP Company, the book publisher HarperCollins, and the Fox Entertainment Group. History. News Corp was created in 1979 by Rupert Murdoch as a holding company for News Limited. News Limited was created in 1923 in Adelaide. Subsequently, the controlling interest was bought by the Herald and Weekly Times. In 1949, Sir Keith Murdoch took control of the Adelaide News. When he died in 1952, his son Rupert inherited a controlling interest in an Adelaide afternoon tabloid, The News. News Limited operates today as News Corporation's Australian brand, the Australian operating out of Surrey Hills in Sydney. Moving into the United States, News Limited made its first acquisition in the United States in 1973, when it purchased the San Antonio Express News. Soon afterwards it founded the National Star, a supermarket tabloid, and in 1976 it purchased the New York Post. In 1981, News Corp bought half of the movie studio 20th Century Fox, buying the other half in 1984. In 1985, News Corp announced it was buying the Metro Media group of stations, setting the stage for the launch of a fourth U.S. commercial broadcasting television network. On the 4th of September 1985, Murdoch became a naturalized citizen to satisfy the legal requirement that only United States citizens could own American television stations. In 1986, the Metro Media deal closed and the Fox Broadcasting Company was launched. This network, known on screen as Fox, can now be picked up in over 96% of U.S. households. Expansion and consolidation. In 1986 and 1987, News Corp moved to adjust the production process of its British newspapers, over which the printing unions had long maintained a highly restrictive grip. A number of senior Australian media moguls were brought into Murdoch's powerhouse, including John Dux, who was managing director of the South China Morning Post. This led to a confrontation with the printing unions National Graphical Association and Society of Graphical and Allied Trades. The move of News International's London operation to Wapping in the East End resulted in nightly battles outside the new plant. Delivery vans and depots were frequently and violently attacked. Ultimately the unions capitulated. By 1992, News Corp had amassed huge debts, which forced it to sell many of the American magazine interests it had acquired in the mid-1980s to K3 Communications, as well spinning off long-held Australian magazines' interests as Pacific Magazines. Much of this debt came from its stake in the Sky Television satellite network in the UK, which incurred massive losses in its early years of operation, which was heavily subsidized with profits from its other holdings until it was able to force rival satellite operator BSB to accept a merger on its terms in 1990. In 1993, News Corp acquired a 63.6% stake of the Hong Kong-based Star TV satellite network for over $500 million, followed by the purchase of the remaining 36.4% in July 1995. Murdoch declared that, have proven unambiguous threat to totalitarian regimes everywhere. Satellite broadcasting makes it possible for information-hungry residents of many closed societies to bypass state-controlled television channels. Quote, in 1995, the Fox network became the object of scrutiny from the FCC when it was alleged that its Australian base made Murdoch's ownership of Fox illegal. The FCC, however, ruled in Murdoch's favour, stating that his ownership of Fox was in the public's best interests. It was also noted that the stations themselves were owned by a separate company whose chief shareholder was a U.S. citizen. Murdoch, although nearly all of the station's equity was controlled by News Corp. In the same year, News Corp announced a deal with MCI Communications to develop a major news website as well as funding a conservative news magazine, The Weekly Standard. In the same year, News Corp launched the Foxtel pay television network in Australia in a partnership with Telstra and Publishing and Broadcasting Limited. In 1996, Fox established the Fox News Channel, a 24-hour cable news station to compete against Ted Turner's rival channel CNN. In 1999, News Corp significantly expanded its music holdings in Australia by acquiring the controlling share in a leading Australian-based label, Michael Gardashi's Mushroom Records, merging it with already held Festival Records to create Festival Mushroom Records. Both Festival and FMR were managed by Rupert Murdoch's son James Murdoch for several years. Also in 1999, The Economist reported that News Corp paid comparatively lower taxes and News Corp Investments specifically had made £11.4 billion in profits over the previous 11 years but had not paid net corporation tax. It also reported that after an examination of the available accounts, News Corp could normally have been expected to pay corporate tax of approximately $350 million. The article explained that in practice, the corporation's complex structure, international scope and use of offshore tax havens allowed News Corporation to pay minimal taxes. In late 2003, News Corp acquired a 34% stake in DirecTV Group, operator of the largest American satellite TV system, from General Motors for $6 billion. DirecTV was sold to Liberty Media in 2008 in exchange for its holding in News International. In January 2005, shortly after reincorporation in the United States, News Corporation announced that it was buying out Fox Entertainment Group. The maneuver delisted Fox from the New York Stock Exchange. Fox traded on the NYSE under the ticker FOX. In July 2005, in one of the company's first major internet purchases, News Corporation purchased the social networking website MySpace for $580 million. News Corporation had beat out Viacom by offering a higher price for the website, and the purchase was seen as a good investment at the time. Of the $580 million purchase price, approximately $327 million has been attributed to the value of MySpace according to the financial advisor Fairness Opinion. Within a year, MySpace had tripled in value from its purchase price. In February 2007, Murdoch announced at the McGraw-Hill Media Summit that Fox would launch a new business news channel later in the year, which would compete directly against rival network CNBC. Murdoch explained that the channel would be more business-friendly than CNBC, because he felt that they leap on every scandal, or what they think is a scandal. Quote, in July 2007, News Corp reached a deal to acquire Dow Jones and AMP Company, owners of The Wall Street Journal, for $5 billion. Despite CNBC already having a contract with Dow Jones to provide content and services to the network, Fox officially launched the Fox Business Channel on the 15th of October 2007. Alexis Glick, the network's original morning show host and vice president of business news, indicated that its lawyers had reviewed the details of Dow Jones' contract with CNBC, but noted that it would still actively use other Dow Jones properties. In 2009, News Corp established News Corp, a global wire service set up to provide news stories to all of News Corp's journalistic outlets. In 2010, due to the Fijian government's requirement that the country's media outlet must be 90% owned by Fiji nationals, News Corporation sold 90% of the stake in the Fijian newspapers to Motibai Group of companies. In late February 2011, News Corp officially put the now struggling MySpace up for sale, which was estimated to be worth $50 minus $200 million. Losses from the last quarter of 2010 were $156 million, over double of the previous year, which dragged down the otherwise strong results of parent News Corp. Its struggles were attributed to the growth of the competing social network Facebook. The deadline for bids, the 31st of May 2011, passed without any above the reserve price of $100 million being submitted. The rapid deterioration in MySpace's business during the most recent quarter had deterred many potent suitors. Later in June, Specific Media and pop singer Justin Timberlake bought the site for $35 million, which CNN reported noted was far less than the $580 million News Corp paid for MySpace in 2005. Murdoch went on to call the MySpace purchase a huge mistake. On the 13th of July 2011, Rupert Murdoch announced that the company would withdraw its takeover bid for BSkyB due to concerns relating to the News of the World scandal. News Corporation already owned, and continues to own, 39.1% of BSkyB. On the 6th of June 2012, News Corporation announced that it would buy out ESPN Inc.'s stake in ESPN Star Sports to gain full control over the Asian sports network. In January 2013, News Corp attained 54.5% majority control of Sky Deutschland. On the 4th of February 2013, News Corporation announced the sale of IGN and its related properties to the publishing company Ziff Davis. News Corp had planned to spin off IGN as an independent company, but failed to do so. Scandals. In July 2011, News Corp closed down the News of the World newspaper in the United Kingdom due to allegations of phone hackings. The allegations include trying to access former Prime Minister Gordon Brown's voicemail, and obtain information from his bank accounts, family's medical records, and private legal files. Allegations of hacking have also been brought up in relation to former Prime Minister Tony Blair and the royal family. Other allegations put out by The Guardian newspaper include the exploitation, with intent to gain access to use private information, of a list of 4,332 names or partial names, 2,987 mobile phone numbers, 30 audio tapes of varying length and 91 PIN codes, of a kind required to access the voicemail of the minority of targets who changed the factory settings on the mobile phones. The names are said to include those of British victims of the 11th of September 2001 terror attacks, family members of victims of the 7/7 bombings on London's transit system, family members of British troops killed overseas, Millie Dowler, a 13-year-old missing British girl who was later found dead, actor Hugh Grant, and a lawyer representing the family of Princess Diana's lover at the inquest into her death. On the 13th of July 2011, News Corp withdrew its bid to purchase the final 61% stake in Sky after pressure from both the Labour and Conservative parties in Parliament. Allegations about the violation of ethical standards by the News Corporation subsidiary News of the World have been speculatively applied to News Corporation holdings in the United States. Senator John Rockefeller stated on the 12th of July 2011 that there should be a government investigation into News Corporation to ensure that Americans have not had the privacy violated. His statement was echoed on Wednesday by Sen. Robert Menendez, who specifically requested an investigation into 9/11 victims, as well as Sen. Frank Lautenberg, who encouraged an investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. On the 13th of July 2011, Representative Peter King wrote a letter to the FBI requesting an investigation into News Corporation's ethical practices, and on the 14th of July, the FBI opened a probe into the hacking of 9/11 victims. Les Hinton, chief executive of the media groups Dow Jones, resigned on the 15th of July, saying, "I have seen hundreds of news reports of both actual and alleged misconduct during the time I was executive chairman of News International and responsible for the company. The pain caused to innocent people is unimaginable. That I was ignorant of what apparently happened is irrelevant, and in the circumstances I feel it is proper for me to resign from News Corp, and apologize to those hurt by the actions of the News of the World." In 2012, following a BBC Panorama report, allegations were made that News Corp subsidiary NDS Group had used hackers to undermine pay TV rivals around the world. Some of the victims of the alleged hacking, such as Aznar, were later taken over by News Corp, and others, such as On Digital, later went bust. NDS had originally been set up to provide security to News Corp's pay TV interests, but emails obtained by Fairfax Media revealed they had also pursued a wider agenda by distributing the keys to rival set-top box operators and seeking to obtain phone records of suspected rivals. The emails were from the hard drive of NDS European chief Ray Adams. In 2012, it was also revealed that Australian Federal Police were working with UK police to investigate hacking by News Corp. Split on the 28th of June 2012, Rupert Murdoch announced that, after concerns from shareholders in response to the recent scandals and to unlock even greater long-term shareholder value, News Corporation's assets would be split into two publicly traded companies, one oriented towards media and the other towards publishing. News Corp's publishing operations were spun out into a new News Corporation with Robert James Thomson, editor of the Wall Street Journal, as CEO. The present News Corporation, which retains most of its media properties and Murdoch as CEO, was renamed 21st Century Fox. Murdoch remains chairman for both companies. Shareholders approved the split on the 11th of June 2013. On the 19th of June 2013, preliminary trading for the new News Corp on the Australian Securities Exchange commenced in preparation for the formal split that was finalised on the 28th of June 2013. Shareholders received 1 share of new News Corp for every 4 shares they owned of the old News Corp. The 2 new companies began trading on the Nasdaq on the 1st of July 2013. Shareholders. In August 2005, the Murdoch family owned only about 29% of the company, of which as of June 2013 had been diluted to around 12%. However, nearly all of these shares were voting shares, which currently stand at 39% of the total voting shares, and Rupert Murdoch retained effective control of the company. Nonetheless, John Malone of Liberty Media had built up a large stake, with about half of their shares being voting shares. Therefore, in November 2006, News Corporation announced its intention to transfer its 38.5% managing interest in DirecTV Group to John Malone's Liberty Media. In return, it bought back Liberty's 16.3% stake in News Corp, giving Murdoch tighter control of the latter firm. Murdoch sold 17.5 million Class A shares in December 2007. Another major stakeholder has been Al-Walid bin Talal, of the Saudi royal family. In 1997, Time reported that Al-Walid owned about 5% of News Corporation. In 2010, Al-Walid's stake in News Corp was about 7%, amounting to $3 billion. In 2013, News Corp had a $175 million investment in Al-Walid's Rotana Group, the Arab world's largest entertainment company. Annual Conference. News Corporation organizes an annual management conference discussing media issues related to geopolitics. Attendees include News Corporation executives, senior journalists, politicians, and celebrities. Previous events were in Cancun, Mexico, and the Hayman Island off the coast of Australia. The events are private and secretive. There are no records available for the agenda or talks given at the conferences, and no uninvited journalists permitted access. The 2006 event in Pebble Beach, California was led by Rupert Murdoch. According to a copy of the agenda leaked to the Los Angeles Times and other media accounts, issues discussed related from Europe to broadcasting and new media, terrorism to the national policy. The event included speeches from Murdoch, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Bono, Al Gore, Senator John McCain, and Bill Clinton, while Israel's President, Shimon Peres, appeared on a panel named Islam and the West. Other notable attendees included Newt Gingrich and Nicole Kidman. Political donations. In anticipation of U.S. midterm elections, News Corp donated $1 million to the Republican Governors Association in June 2010. The move was criticized by Democrats, who said this was evidence of News Corp's media outlets' conservative leanings. The Democratic Governors Association also criticized the donation and demanded more transparency in the reporting by News Corp companies. DGA head Nathan Daschle wrote to the chairman of News Corp company Fox News, Roger Ailes, "In the interest of some fairness and balance, I request that you add a formal disclaimer to your coverage any time any of your programs covers governors or gubernatorial races between now and Election Day." Around the same time, News Corp also donated $1 million to the United States Chamber of Commerce. The chamber aggressively supported the Republican effort to retake Congress in 2010. This donation and an earlier $1 million contribution that News Corp made to the Republican Governors Association led media critics to question whether the company had crossed an ethical line for a media company. Corporate governance. The company's board of directors consists of 16 individuals: Rupert Murdoch, Jose Maria Aznar, Natalie Bancroft, Peter Barnes, James W. Breyer, Chase Carey, Elaine Chao, David F. DeVoe, Viet Din, Sir Roderick Ian Eddington, Joel I. Klein, James Murdoch, Lachlan Murdoch, Alvaro Uribe, Stanley S. Schumann, Arthur M. Siskind, Office of the Chairman, Rupert Murdoch, Chase Carey, David DeVoe, James Murdoch, Roger Ailes, Daniel Suarez Garcia.